there, my name is Whitney Bullock, and you just heard Excerpt C for the Viola audition for this season's Houston Youth Symphony Orchestra auditions. And this excerpt is so beautiful and lyrical and peaceful. It was such a joy to work on it and become acquainted with this from the Suite for Orchestra by Christopher Wilson. So first off, what I always say is to find a recording of this and listen to it in context. And so this movement, the Romance movement of the Suite for String Orchestra, if you literally type in Christopher Wilson, Suite for String Orchestra, one of the first recordings that pops up is a recording with the score on it, which is even better because then you can listen and follow along as you're listening. And so this point in the Romance movement happens about 18 minutes and 44 seconds into it. And according to the recording that I was listening to, the Romance was the fifth movement, not the fourth movement. So just make sure that whatever you're listening to is from the movement that's entitled Romance or Romance. And it's very unmistakable. You'll hear it, this part in the recording very clearly. So first off, a couple of things to note is the difference between the triplets, which are pretty constant throughout, and then the isolated moments that you have a dotted eighth note to a 16th note. So one of the ways to practice this would be simply just to subdivide things out loud. So here, I'm gonna put the metronome on 65, and I'm gonna do the very beginning of this with the metronome but separate bows, and I'm gonna subdivide the D at the very beginning into 3 16th notes. Let me turn this up a little louder. So 1, 2, 3. Is that we make the dotted 8th and 16th slurs sound too triplety. So I want you to really be aware of that and try to be super accurate with that. Another place we could go to is 1, 2, 3 before C. And maybe you could even turn those quarter notes into 4 16th notes. Like that. So that we're making sure it's a real good dotted rhythm on those. Probably if somebody was going to make a bet as to what I would say to practice any excerpt ever or anything ever is to do it with a drone. And so is there a reliable drone we could use throughout this whole excerpt? I did it with the D, and some things were a little funky, but it could work. But something maybe a little more helpful would be to isolate the arpeggio triplets. So for instance, the first full measure of this excerpt, droning a D and making it separate bows just to really hone in on the intonation. And maybe you could even use that 1 before C. Just to make sure everything is really centered within those triplets. Another thing I wanted to mention is that oftentimes when we make a recording using our phone or whatnot, that the sound really gets compressed, the dynamic levels. And so things don't sound as big of a dynamic level as we imagine that we're doing. And I do want you to start piano at the very beginning, very beautiful, very tender, pure sounding, but we also don't want it to sound weak. So don't start too soft, because otherwise that just might not come across in a recording. And so I'm already starting to vibrate my third finger D. And we want it to be really, like I said, peaceful, lyrical, singing, just so lovely. And the crescendo doesn't really happen until one before C, and we're going from piano all the way to fortissimo. So really use your up bow right before C as a chance to get to that fortissimo E natural. Really sing that out with your beautiful viola sound. Also, after C, the second measure of C in that whole line with the triplets, since you'll be doing it for your audition without a metronome on, we also want to make sure we're not slowing down or speeding up. And that's where sometimes listening to a recording can be helpful, but unfortunately in this area, I think the second violins are playing duple eighth notes against the triplets, but really just hash it out with a metronome, really feel it in your inner pulse in those measures. And then at D, the very end, back to that simple sound. Just keep your vibrato spinning. Don't use too slurpy of fingerings, just really nice and beautiful and simple. And that will be just a great performance for you to give. Okay, so I'm going to play this. It's already at quite a slow-ish tempo, so I'm going to do it a little bit slower, but with all separate bows. And hopefully that will be able for you. You will be able to play with me on that slowly. Actually, you know what I'm going to even do? I will subdivide all the eighth note, dotted eighth note into 16th notes as well. So this is that version that I'm going to do right now. So this is quarter note at 49. One, two, three. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful with some of the subdivisions, and of course at home you can go even slower with that with your metronome if you would like. And now I'm going to do it up to tempo, adding back the slurs but with a metronome. 1, 2,